Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome in, everyone. My name is Pat Lee. I'm the lead facilitator and community host for the Reyou Mindfulness Collective. One of the really interesting things is this is a constant learning experience for me, and each time I interact with a client, it's about emphasizing the learning and the practice of learning and the constant going back and forth with the way that we think about our stories and the way that we put ourselves into the world and see ourselves in the world. And it's really interesting because I was listening to a masterclass by James Clear this morning. So James Clear is the author of this book called Atomic Habits, and I use a lot of his work on habit formation in some of the workshops that I teach, especially when we start to think about things like incorporating mindfulness practices into your daily routine and trying to move towards mindful living, or even the way that we engage with mindful journaling. These are all habits that we cultivate over time. But I was listening to James Clear's masterclass this morning, and he said something that really kind of triggered an aha moment for me that I thought I would share. And he made this point that there is a difference between motion and action. Motion, in his explanation of it, is this preparation for, it's the research, it's the gathering evidence, it's the taking time to talk to people, it's the taking time to learn something. That's the motion. But the action is actually going out and doing the thing, getting the thing done. And that made me kind of think a little bit about, just my own experience and my own story. And I thought right away, oh wow, this is exactly, the kind of language that I like to use when I talk about myself as an academic. So for people who are familiar with my story, I often refer to myself as a recovering academic. I have a PhD in peace and conflict studies, I have a master's in political studies, and I have an honors Bachelor of Science degree in international relations and public administration. I used to teach at university level, sometimes still do. The whole idea is, the research, the knowing, the information, the gathering information, the knowing about things, the finding the evidence, the explanations, the theory. I'm so accustomed to that. And one of the things that I appreciated about myself, that I learned, is that there is a difference between having all of that evidence and all of that information and seeing actual change happening in your own life circumstance and in the world. And so I use the term recovering academic to talk about the way that I've sort of take all the things that I've learned, that I understand, that I've seen, I've done the analysis of, and I move that into practice, the actual doing of. And that's one of the problems that individuals face more often than not when it comes to showing up in the world and making decisions. And that is, we spend so much time informing ourselves. We spend so much time gathering the evidence. We spend so much time weighing up our options, weighing up the pros and cons of something, evaluating the risk. And these are all things that I spent a lot of my life, even outside of academia, being trained to do. But at some point you do have to live, right? And at some point you do have to use the information, good or bad, or even neutral. And sometimes you have to step into the fray without knowing what is going to happen, and you don't know what's going to be the outcome. And so I often kind of come back to that. I'm a recovering academic. I don't need to intellectualize this problem. What I need to do is act, and act with compassion and with grace and equanimity, and not being too attached to the outcome when it comes to the action that I am engaging with. And so that was sort of a really nice moment in my morning learning and reflection practice, to kind of come back to this idea of what it means to be a recovering academic, what it means to differentiate between motion and action. Motion is good. motion, the planning, the preparation, the taking the time to learn, the taking the time to think about, the taking the time to teach, taking the time to prepare for, to analyze the risks. It's all very good. But in the grand scheme of things, action is where the living, where the life is at. And I know that for me, I'm so glad that I've internalized that lesson. And I really hope for other people that shows up for them in different ways. And you know what? If it does show up for you in a different way, like, I invite you to share that with me. I would love to hear the story. We all have beautiful stories to share, and I think it's just so wonderful when we can contribute stories that help to lift each other up and create that sense of support, belonging, inclusivity, and mindfulness along the way. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a very pleasant rest of your day.